There are some negatives that come into this too, and it's one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to the promotion and relegation side of thing, and that's what happens when you go down. Now, we said that in a more controlled environment like they're in now, they have some ability to mediate some of those risks, but I think we put together a list of the last 5 years from, or actually 4 years because we didn't count the COVID year. So 21 into 25. And we basically took every club that called it quits for the last 4 years. And I think something and varying levels, by the way, not all. Actually, no, I think this is first, second, third division, maybe. I got to check my notes, but I believe it's somewhere around the 35 to 40% value of all the clubs that have gone out in the last 4 or 5 years have made it known that they were, or maybe they didn't cite it this way, but it happened directly after a relegation. So they might not have said like, "Oh, we don't have the money to do it, we're done." But if it looks like a duck, it talks like a duck. Right, it's a duck. So this risk of financial insolvency for teams going down, and the main reason being that fan revenue is a main driving force of the USL right now. Right, they don't have a huge TV deal. They don't have a lot of sponsors and stuff coming in that way yet. I will preface that with yet. But if you go down, and we've seen MLS teams and teams all over the country where if your team starts playing poorly, a la the Carolina Panthers, you don't get fans in the door. If you don't get fans in the door, you don't get money. You don't get money, you're hemorrhaging, right? That is a legitimate risk of going down. And I know people don't want to talk about like, oh, everybody's going to stay with their team through thick and thin because that's what the game's about. No, I understand the beauty behind that, but I don't believe that's something that is going to happen right off the bat, right? Give it 15 years, maybe, but right off the bat, I don't think so. And I think that's one of the biggest risks right now that they're taking is they're taking teams that have okay to not great attendances and saying, okay, now you're going to risk losing those fans and not being able to make it, or spending lots of money to get up to a level that doesn't pay you back out.
Yeah, I think it's a big risk from USL. I think they've always been in the shadow of MLS trying to figure out where do we fit in this world of the US soccer or landscape. So for me, I feel that they decided this was a move they wanted to make to differentiate themselves. And because of that, all of the risks that come with it are, gonna be part of that, of course, relegation. But like you said, right now, teams are folding anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think in a lot of ways, and the reason you got that 90% from the owners buy-in on this is because the upside from their point of view outweighs the downside, right? You can have a team right now in USL League One or there's, championship, and you can still fold, right? You can have a certain amount of, you can come in, you can have a few years where you get some fans. It doesn't really go well. You don't have the money to keep it alive and you fold. The same thing can happen, when you have Pro Rel. The difference is the teams that come in at a lower level or wherever into the league system, they can then have the opportunity just purely based off merit to be able to rise up. So for me, I think that's the reason you see a lot of those pros outweigh the cons. Yes, the real dangers of teams folding, but like I said, it's already happened in this country. It happens a lot. It's something that USL has always dealt with, right? They have owners that are rich, but not insanely rich. It can
Mm-hmm.
happen. But it's also something that happens across many countries across, like you get down in the lower leagues, all of this financial backing. Most of the lower leagues of English football is funded by owners who are just hemorrhaging money. Year on year, they're just giving out money. They're never until they get high enough up. I mean, you look at the Wrexham documentary, for example, these guys are bleeding millions and millions into a team that's in League Two, trying to eventually make it. The same thing would be said for what's happening here in USL. Promotion, relegation, you want to try and make yourself financially viable, but in reality, whether you have Pro Rel or not, a lot of the teams in the lower leagues of USA are going to have to be funded by owners who are digging into their pockets every year because the numbers, Andrew, just they often don't match. And it's very difficult. I mean, look at MLS and everything that they did in their early years to, keep the league alive. So a lot of that, I think the other cons is like parachute payments. Where did USL, how do they find the money for parachute payments? Who pays for that? Where does that come from? If that's something that they do go down. I think there are a lot of financial negatives, but for me, that's the only negatives I see personally.
Hmm.
I think as a community, if your club gets relegated, I don't think that immediately means people stop going. I know
Yeah.
it's a very American idea of like, oh, was not watching the top flight anymore, therefore I don't want to go and watch it. It's not interesting to me. But I think soccer overrides that in a lot of ways where it's grassroots, it's local communities, people are invested in their club. If they go down, I don't think attendances are gonna they're gonna take a dip, but I don't think they're gonna be insanely bad where your club just gets wiped out from one relegation.
Hmm.
Clubs will rise, clubs will fall. But for me, the big cons of this is just the risks of financial, which, like I said, already kind of exist anyway.
Yeah, no, and I